And our top focus right now remains the case in Karnataka where a prominent, influential Lingayat Seer has been accused of the rape of two young girls. We'll bring you more in just a second.
ಪೊಲೀಸರಿಗೆ ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣ ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರ ಇದೆ ಅವರು ತನಿಖೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಸತ್ಯ ಹೊರಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ
He is a very noble man who has done some great contribution to the state.
Our first story of the day. Heat continues to mount on the accused Lingayat Seer, Shivamurthy Murugha. Remember, he heads a particularly prominent mutt of the Lingayat community. The Lingayat community is responsible for 17% of the votes in Karnataka, a state that's about to go into elections in just a few months from now. The Chitradurga police have booked the Lingayat mutt Seer and four others under the POCSO Act. This is after receiving sexual assault allegations from two minors over the weekend. We told you about the political prominence of this mutt and of this seer because there's been a lack of action against the seer. The seer himself has said that he's innocent. He's claimed that this entire situation is a big conspiracy against him. He actually addressed followers yesterday, thousands and thousands of followers who'd come to visit his mutt. Protests have also erupted in Chitradurga over police inaction. It's been 72 hours since the FIR was registered. No arrests have yet been made. The seer was briefly detained, but he was released after that. The statements of the two minor complainants are also yet to be recorded despite medical tests already being completed. Here's a quick ground report of the entire story. Then we're going to connect with my colleague at the ground. We'll wait in just a second.
Anger is growing against prominent Lingayat Seer, Shivamurthy Murugha Sharanaru. The chief pontiff of the prominent Murugha mutt in Karnataka's Chitradurga was detained after he was booked for allegedly sexually assaulting minor girls at institutes run by the mutt. He has been booked under sections of the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. The complaint was filed on behalf of two minors who reached out to an NGO in Mysuru. The girls, aged 15 and 16, were staying at a hostel under the Murugha mutt. They were allegedly sexually abused for over 3.5 years. After they narrated their ordeal, it was brought to the attention of the District Children's Welfare Committee. Apart from the seer, the FIR was also registered against four other individuals, including the warden of the institution. But the seer remained adamant. He addressed his devotees who had gathered at the mutt premises and claimed that there was a long-drawn conspiracy against him. Karnataka Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai was tight-lipped on the matter, saying the truth will come out.
ಎರಡು ಕೇಸುಗಳನ್ನು ಪೊಲೀಸರು ದಾಖಲೆ ಮಾಡಿ ತನಿಖೆ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಈ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಮಾತನಾಡೋದಾಗಲಿ ವ್ಯಾಖ್ಯಾನ ಮಾಡೋದಾಗಲಿ
Even Congress State President D.K. Shivkumar didn't criticize the seer.
I have seen that he is a very noble man who has done some great contribution to the state. Let me not interfere with whatever the police or the government is doing late.
In the run-up to next year's assembly elections in Karnataka, both the Congress and the BJP have been trying to woo Lingayats. They make up nearly 17% of the state's population and can determine the poll outcome in 90 to 100 constituencies. But will that come in the way of a fair probe against the Lingayat Seer? Or will the fight for votes come before justice?
ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದು ನಮಗೆ ಒಂದು ರೀತಿ ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮವಾದ ವಿಚಾರ ಏನಿದೆ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಮುಂದುವರಿಬೇಕು ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಕಾನೂನಿನ ಚೌಕಟ್ಟೇನಿದೆ ಆ ಕಾನೂನಿನ ಚೌಕಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಹೇಳಿಕೆಗಳು ಬಂದಾಗ ಅನಿವಾರ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಇಂಥ ಘಟನೆ ನಡೀತದೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂತಿಮವಾದ ಸ್ವರೂಪ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕಾದು ನೋಡೋಣ.
My colleague Ritu is with us live right now from outside the Murugha mutt in Chitradurga. Ritu, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Ritu, for our audiences, if you could just bring more clarity. Yesterday we know the seer was detained, but there seem to be differing reports on whether or not he was questioned before being released shortly after. Could you bring us more clarity on the action taken against the seer? Could you also tell us what reason are authorities giving for this delay?
Yes, so you see, in the major development in this story related to this Murugha mutt here in the Chitradurga, yesterday when the main seer, the chief seer, in fact left towards the Haveri, he was being stopped by the police officials over there, and then he was being requested to head back to the mutt because as the investigation in this whole matter is on, and thus this would be a troublesome for the police to take up this challenging task here in the Chitradurga, as the case is here right now in the Chitradurga, which has been transferred from the Mysuru to Chitradurga, and the investigation is is happening in the process over there. So his, in fact, departure would be a trouble for the police as well, and might lead to a law and order situation out of control too. So with all that, he was being told to come back to this mutt, and of course he happens to be still inside the mutt where we are reporting you from. So that's something that we know about, how he left, and then he was being detained and then again being released. So this is the biggest question that is being asked by the people and by the activists, that why is there a delay in the police action? One, and second thing is why the state government is not taking this particular issue very seriously. Is it because this mutt is being considered to be a very powerful mutt, of course, and an influential mutt as well, and plays a major role as well during the elections? So we have seen how this particular Lingayat community is seen as in one largest community here in the Karnataka, and plays a major role as well. So with all this in the place, this has been a challenge for the police too, for why not taking an action immediately, because the case that has been taken place is considered to be a very sensitive case. There has to be an immediate actions, because the loss of a time is nothing but a loss of an evidence too. We're getting to see how there have been most of the evidence that has been vanished over here, because there has been a lot time now that it's already been 4 days that the FIR was being registered in the Mysuru from the Vodanadi Seva Samaste, and then the case was being transferred in the Chitradurga, but there is no action seeming coming from the police or from the state government. When we talk about the political reaction too, there is a very mixed political reactions that we're getting to see. We see a set of leaders, in fact, backing the seer, saying that he has done a couple of good work for the people. His service has been eminent for the people, so they happen to back one side. On the other side, you see few leaders happen to be silent, and they just say that the investigation is in the process, and thus it is not right to speak because it's a POCSO case that we're talking about. But of course, when we talk about the police action being delayed, you see they also say that because the law and order situation is very important right now, because he is seen as in one of the chief seer that we're talking about in this whole case, and he happens to be an A1 accused too. So this is all in the place. This is a complicated case, as well as the police themselves say us this. With all that, of course, the biggest question that has been asked right now here is that why is there a delay in the police action, and why the state government is not taking up this issue very seriously.
Okay, Ritu, could you also bring our audiences more clarity? Because I do understand there have been complaints, and then there have also been counter complaints, particularly those involving a JDS MLA, S.K. Basavarajan. Could you bring our audiences more clarity there? Because it has gotten quite confusing.
Yes. Yes, so an FIR that was being registered in the Mysuru, you see there was including the chief seer, so there are other 4 as well who are accused in this whole case. But right there we also know that the A2 accused in this whole incident, that's the Basavaraj that we're talking about, who is seen as in the administrator here in the mutt, in fact, and is also a JDS leader that we know. Now, but what our sources are saying us on ground is that there's a conspiracy not just outside the premises, there's also a conspiracy inside the premises. So this is not something new that the seer is going through 15 years back as well. It's almost been, in fact, 15 years that the seer has got to say this kind of conspiracy against him, because the mutt believes in serving the people and doing a prominent work for the people. So this has been a continuous word, that is the continuous lines that we're getting to hear from the seer. But we're talking about the Baswaraj. You see there is also a counterpart FIR that has been registered from the owner of this hotel itself, named Rashmi, who also says that she was also been sexually abused by this administrator, and thus she also says that this also has to be taken up seriously, because she was also a victim of this incident. So that's something that we know about the role of this administrator here in the mutt. But as said, what our sources say is that there's a huge conspiracy inside as well as outside the mutt.
Ritu, thank you so much for bringing us those details. All right, for our audience.